Welcome to the Wild Divine Bliss podcast, where we explore spontaneous spiritual experiences, including Kundalini type phenomenon, through psychology, neuroscience, philosophy, and most importantly, lived experience. And this podcast really focuses on normalization, making it more of a normal experience that people are willing to talk about, what it's like to integrate this experience, and then really some clear thinking around this, creating language and framework so that people will know where to put this in their own lived philosophy. So today we have an extraordinary guest with us, Dr. Michael Baba, who is a chiropractic healer who also had one of these extraordinary Kundalini experiences that truly changed his life. And that's something that I love to do on this podcast, is interview people to find out what was their experience like, how did they frame it when they first had it, and now that time has gone on, what does it look like now? How has this been integrated? Like, how do they see it? What types of philosophies actually seem to resonate with the experience they have? So anyway, welcome, Michael. It's so good to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
And
I'm excited to be here.
yeah, I'm so excited to have this conversation about this. So first of all, it's like we met because I did a chiropractic session with you. It was at a event called an ecstatic dance, where vendors have their booths out and you get to go do a little sample of either body work or massage. And I really needed a chiropractic adjustment. I saw this chiropractor was there, and I went, and then he laid his hands on me and I could feel the Kundalini energy move through him. And I was like, all right, okay, we need to have a conversation about this. We need to find out like what's happening here. So sure enough, he's had an experience, more than that. Let's say this is his life's work. So anyway, Michael, please tell us more about how this all began and your journey. Like, I'm so curious about when you first heard the word Kundalini, let's say even before this happened, had you heard the word? Did you think about it? What was your framework?
Yeah, so before this all happened, I never heard the word before. Um, Long story short, I was in energetic chiropractic. I was receiving energetic chiropractic for about 5 years, and I think it was about maybe a
Mm.
year into it or so. I had this vision and the spontaneous awakening on the table where I had a big rush of energy and had a vision of two snakes moving up my spine. And they were clearing out and moving all the way up and moved all the way out my crown. And I was in this complete bliss state after. And I remember sitting at the park. I walked to the park after. I was like, I just got to sit down. And I Googled on my phone two snakes moving up the spine. And that's when
Oh,
I found out about the word Kundalini. And from there, it's been a process of unfolding to discover more about this energy. And since that moment, it's been this driving force in my life, and it's been this guiding force. And I've just wanted to know more and more about it, and that's led me to the work that I do now of helping people uncover and discover this energy within themselves. And through that, I learn more and more about it every day.
wow. You know what I find so fascinating is that you had an image of the archetype of Kundalini, because there are different archetypes in different cultures. And you literally, like, as you were having the experience, you had this very archetypal imagery of the snakes. Some people have a woman, some people have, I mean, it's extraordinary the different layers that people access and when they have these similar experiences. And as Carl Jung would call it, you're tapping into the archetypal, you're like breaking through the normal cognitive structures that we have. And I
Yeah.
find that really fascinating. You were just able to go, oh, you're able to Google it and find out like what this is and start really learning about it. I mean, and to me, that shows the power of technology, that we can connect with each other these days as well.
And
When it's
for
like,
me, it shows
yeah.
the power of this energy that it transcends the mind or transcends my understanding. I think it would have been different if I knew about it before And I had this experience because then in my mind, I could rationalize and be like, oh, I just made it up. I saw this vision. I created this experience in my consciousness, right? Because maybe it's something that I wanted, or
Hmm.
but for me, it was this completely organic experience that just happened. And I always look back on it. I think if it happened in a different way, for me personally, my left brain, my logical analytical brain would grab on too much and kind of rationalize myself out of it. But since it happened that way, for me, I've been able to go to keep uncovering like what it is, because it was past my mind. It was outside of my mind. It was outside
Yeah.
of my conscious awareness, and this imagery, this thing came in and stoked this fire within me.
Yeah. That's really phenomenal. I mean, it's to think about these are things that are beyond our cognitive constructs of how we see reality. So I'm wondering, like, how did it shift how you saw reality at all?
It it has, and it continues to every single day.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's I mean, now it's like I just see energy as a vibrancy, as color. I see energy flowing through people and auras and that whole thing. And that's been this
Oh,
uncovering process as I kind of fall more into and trust this energy that's in myself, and because I am that energy, it's just uncovering more of me. And so it's completely changed the way I see the world. Physically, the way I see energy, the way I see myself, the way I see other people, the way I interact with the world. It's completely changed everything about the way I operate.
okay. Well, you said something so nonchalantly that I just have to pick up back on it. You're like, oh, and I see auras, I see energy. And it's like, but wait, that's like not a normal thing to be seeing those things.
Well, that's the
And
thing. I do think
yeah,
it's actually normal. And, it's said
okay.
that kids see auras and animals see auras, and we see energy
Mm,
all day. If we take it from like a left brain point of view, is that everything is actually energy, right? Everything is just a waveform, and it's a densification of energy. And so the table, everything is just energy, right? So we're actually seeing energy all day long, but it's like, can we train ourselves to see the more subtle energies and the more wistful energies? People see them all the time. It's like when people go, "Oh my gosh, you're glowing." Or like, "Oh wow, those two people are in love." It's like you can see something
mm,
interacting in them, and your conscious mind might not know what it is. You might pin it as something else, but it's my belief and my experience that we see these
yeah.
energies all the time, and people experience them. They just give them different words. And so, can we train ourselves? Can we allow ourselves to see more than what our linear logical mind allows us to see?
Yeah, and it
Or
sounds
maybe
like it's
we're conditioned, right?
mhm.
What we're conditioned by society to see even.
Yeah, well, that's really true, and that's why it's interesting you say, "Oh, I see auras," and a lot of people don't see auras. You see the energy, but now it's so interesting, like, since you've had this experience, like, seeing the energy now seems like it's normal for you,
Yeah,
and
very,
I'm
very
wondering,
much
like,
so.
when it first happened and you first started seeing energy, was it more like, "Oh, well, okay, this is just part of how I see the world"? Was there any moment where you were like, "Oh my god, what am I seeing?" And it's really different for people when they have these Kundalini experiences. For some people, it's like, "Oh, yeah, this is normal." Or some people, it's kinda like, "Oh, shoot, what do I do with this?" So I'm wondering, what was that like for you?
Yeah, I for a moment I thought I was completely psychotic, which
That's yeah, but that's important to
very
know.
common. Yeah,
Seriously.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's just very, very
Yeah.
common. So, I got online, did a whole bunch of research. I joined actually a Reddit forum, Reddit
Oh.
Kundalini. There's this guy, his username is Mark D. Halffool, and he was a very instrumental in my um, uncovering of kind of what Kundalini is. He may have been
Oh.
my first teacher in of a sense, and it was through this Reddit forum um, back like 10 years ago, and through that I learned to make it more normal. But at first, for me, it blew open. Like I just blew open
Yeah.
like a nerve, and I was walking around, seeing stuff, seeing colors, and it was too much. And so I've learned how to kind of tamper it down, and manage it. But it's very common for people to kind of go through these kind of manic or psychotic episodes at first, and not really know what's going on, because it for like a full awakening or very subtle sudden awakening be very disruptive for people's lives.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like ontological shock. It's a shock of looking at what your framework of reality is. And you have to learn how to like understand, like, am I crazy? Am I not crazy? What's really going on here? And it's that shock that sometimes keeps people, let's say, they get very traumatized by this, by the shock itself, without having some real education behind it. So that's why I think it's like so important, like in this podcast, for people to share their experience so then other people who are experience radical Kundalini awakenings, that they can go, oh, okay, there are other people who have had this. Other people who are grounded, who actually are professionals, who, you know, are well respected in the community. And especially that shock, it's so important to talk about. Like one of my more, I call more radical awakening times. I've had like three major experiences of Kundalini, and it was like the last one where I had so much electricity running through my hands. And then I was feeling like between either bliss that was like oozing out of me where I could barely think straight. And then if I was slightly emotional, it was like fire moving through my veins.
Right.
And it was like such a huge difference between like the two. And then I wondered, am I crazy? Like what's going on here? And that helped me like dive even further into, okay, what am I experiencing? Is this called Kundalini? What is this called? And that's what brought me down the academic road with this research. And that was about 15 years ago, to start figuring out like, what is this? Rather
Yeah.
than just, okay, it's a spiritual awakening and we've heard this talked about. But when you feel the energetic part of it move through your body, like the energy sensations, that's, I think, when it can get really interesting when you
Yes.
start seeing, yeah. Did you
Yeah.
ever have anything like that with the electricity and like light bulbs around you or computers, or like how are you
Yeah, yeah,
how
you
was your
said a bunch of things I want to touch on there, but on
okay,
that
good.
one, yeah, I used to blow out my phone and I used to blow out electronics all the time. I've learned to keep them outside of my aura. So I used to bring them
Oh,
inside of my aura, and that would cause all sorts of weird energetics happening. But if I learn to separate my aura from the electronic device, that's when I stop blowing things out. Uh,
wow.
yeah,
Amazing.
yeah. So it could, people can try this. I know it's a very common thing. One of my,
Hmm.
my first teacher said she was able to start her car once by touching the batteries.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I've heard of people being able to do this. Like you see some of the like the qigong masters, and especially in the East, where people really have learned how to cultivate this energy through their healing practices, is be able to literally do things like that. But that your teacher was able to do it, that's freaking amazing.
yeah,
Wow.
and you said something
Yeah.
earlier where it felt
Hmm.
like fire going through your veins,
Yep.
and it can have that very physical electric feel to it. And for me, what that signifies is that the nervous system isn't as open and adaptable and receptive to the energy moving through. And sometimes as the energy moves through, it's just gonna burn like that a little bit. Kundalini is a very fiery energy, so it's just gonna kind of
Yeah.
burn through and clean it out. But what can happen, and what I found in particular in my own life, is that my system wasn't able to handle that much energy moving through. And I had very physical blocks in my system. I was getting pure energetic work and I had very physical blocks, and the
Wow.
energy wasn't moving through those physical blocks. And it was actually causing me a bit of psychosis because I couldn't move the energy through. And then I received chiropractic care, which helped set the vertebras and help open the spine up. And then I can
Oh,
move
wow.
energy through those areas. And the psychosis went away. I almost stopped doing energy work because I couldn't get it through this one particular area in my, like the diaphragm area. And it was two adjustments from my one of my chiropractic mentors, and I was able to move energy through. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm looking for. But that kind of burning in the veins, it can be that you just need to kind of upgrade your nervous system, or you need to like move your
Hmm.
body or kind of help get that energy through.
Yeah. And that's exactly what ended up happening. It was, and I hear that happens with a lot of people who have these experiences. It can either be very blissful, or sometimes you get the fire in the veins. And for me, it was whenever my emotions were slightly out of whack, it was like if I got the slightest bit angry, I went from utter bliss to that fire in my veins. And it was like really, and then I ended up doing, for me personally, it's like, this is not a recommendation for all people out there. It's like what just worked for me is like I ended up doing Kundalini yoga because it helped to
Good one.
open all the meridians and it helped to move the energy through in an even way. So that's what ended up curing that issue for me. But yeah, it was also during that time where it's like I had an Android phone. Forget it. You know, it's like I blew up 2 phones, blew up 2 computers. You know, it's like I'd walk in the room and the light bulbs blew up and it was like, "Oh my God, okay, I need to be like in a calm state.
Oh yeah.
Otherwise it's gonna happen."
I remember when this was all first happening to me. I had an Android phone also, and I still do, but it, I would open up a web page or I'd go on. It happened so many times where I'd open up my phone would blitz. It would like freak out. It'd static. It would open up a web page. It would flash through a whole bunch of web pages and then open up to a web page. And it was exactly what I needed to learn at that time. It was insane.
So
It happened so many times. It was
wow.
weird. It was just at that part of my life, everything was just so lucid and so just soupy. And I just think back to it, because it was such a wild thing that it just like boom and then opened up. And it was exactly what I needed to know at that moment.
Isn't that incredible? See, and it's like that one thing I really love about like when people have these Kundalini experiences, it blows apart the frameworks of how we think life is supposed to work.
Mm.
Like, I always think those things are, like, super exciting. I'm like, "Oh my god, reality isn't what I thought." I'm, like, so excited. But I know it can be really disconcerting, but, like, I love those moments that you're talking about where you're, like, wondering about something and then boom, there was your answer. Now, how did you frame that? Like, what was your idea, like, why that happened? I'm really curious.
That time in my life, I
Mhm.
was learning about how things work, and I was so blown open that was just how they work, and that's still how my life
Wow.
works. It's more, maybe back for a letter word, better controlled now. It's more sustained. Through there was like almost pure chaos energy, like whipping through, and like you said, it's kind of these highs and lows of emotional
Yeah.
states. So things like
Yeah.
that would happen. But for me now, how I
Wow.
view the world, like that's the natural state, is it being able to operate like that and allow things to like to flow. And you have a thought about something, you have a need, a desire, and that thing shows up in the way that you need to know it. I'll think about like if I have a question I need to know, I'll hold that question in my awareness and the answer will come to me somehow. It'll be through somebody telling me, I'll find a book, it'll be intuitive, something will show up to answer that question for me. Sometimes it's very quick. Sometimes it's been moments,
Yeah.
minutes, hours, days. Sometimes I've held questions for years, and I just kind of each day or so often I'll get a little bit of an answer to it. Um, so it's holding something in your awareness and allowing it to come through you. I would say it's like you hold the question, um, the equal sign, right? So you hold one part of the question, the equal sign, and then you allow the other part of the question to kind of the other part of the answer to come to you. But
Oh.
having the question gives you half of the answer, right? Because I have A equals B. Well, I need to have A, the question, and the equal sign, and let B come to me.
Yeah, wow, I really like that. It's like you're almost creating the momentum by having the question.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you're creating the
Yeah.
energetic momentum. You're opening the space to allow that to come in.
If this episode is resonating, you might want to join the Wild Divine Bliss community. We have current research, host live conversations, and create intelligent dialogue around Kundalini and spontaneous spiritual experiences. You'll find all the details at wilddivinebliss.com. Back to the episode. Okay, so one thing I'm really curious about is like before all this happened in your life, were you into spirituality, thinking about any of this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I was always very spiritual. I grew up in the Orthodox Christian church with my
Wow.
family, and it's a very mystical church, and as far as Christianity goes, and it was great. Loved it. Was really into that. I was always exploring what that meant. Around 18, I learned about Reiki, and started kind of
Oh,
practicing Reiki at 18. And then at 25, I had my Kundalini awakening. So through that time, I was kind of
wow.
exploring, but not as much. And then at 25 is really when I started deeply exploring, like more in the energetics of things.
Yeah, because it came to you, it blossomed open.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, and it's I find that it happens for many of us who've had these Kundalini experiences is that somehow we felt called to this, let's say, path of higher consciousness or seeing the world through a different lens from when we were kids. It's just like, like for me also, it's like I remember finding the first book on my stepfather's bookshelf. I was like 14 years old, and I find this book called Transcendental Meditation. And I was fascinated. I thought it was like the keys to the universe. I was like, this is the key, and I know it is. And but yeah, so it's like and some of my other guests as well, it's like they all started on this path of introspection and just knowing that there is more to the world than the three-dimensional reality we live in. So that's what I find so fascinating. I'm wondering, like, when you were a kid exploring like Reiki, like what made you start doing Reiki of all things?
I was in a community college class. It was
Uh-huh.
intrapersonal communication, so how you communicate with yourself.
Ooh,
And the
wow, I
teacher
like
was
that.
amazing. I believe her name was Barbara Walters at OCC. And we learned about Reiki, about tarot, about crystals, about psychic
What?
energy, and yeah, it was amazing. And so that's where I got introduced to it, and I dabbled through through the next few years, just kind of doing it more as a party trick, just I could feel
Wow.
I could feel energy out of your hands. I put my hands on people, and they'd be able to feel it. Um,
Oh, well, that's an interesting key because so you were already able to channel this energy before, I like to call them Kundalini expansions before you really had this incredible expansion and experience.
yeah, yeah. One one time it
Wow.
scared me. We were at a party, and it was late, and my buddy we were drinking, and I was like, "Oh, let me do Reiki on you." I put my hands on him, and it burned him. And
Oh,
he's kind of freaked out. He's like, "Dude, it's hot, it's hot. How did it burns?" And so that kind of freaked me out
wow.
about it. And that's so I was like, okay, I gotta respect this energy a lot more. Um,
Wow, amazing. Yeah, so it's like you're basically a natural healer who's like learned
yeah.
how to really
And
uh, yeah.
one of my favorite things to do is to help people experience this energy. And that's kind of how I
Uh-huh.
got into what I do, is that having people have an experience of this energy move through them and then be able to, in a sense, name it and to
Oh.
understand it a little bit more, I found has been really impactful for people in their healing, and like getting them to learn how to move it through themselves and become their own healer is really what's most important, is because we get to learn how to then heal ourselves, and then through there we can spread out and heal the world.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, I love that. That's so tell me like how do you do that with people like have them experience that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm actually I've done it in the past, but teaching a course. I'm calling it like Awaken Your Intuitive Healer and then Master Your Intuitive
Oh.
Healer. And those are working with energy and with Kundalini and learning kind of how to do this, and kind of sharing my approach and all these beautiful techniques that I've learned, and how to kind of facilitate this flow of energy. But really what it comes down to is like stimulating the flow of energy in their body and finding various ways to do that.
Mhm.
And a lot of the time it's like a singing bowl. You have two singing bowls next to each other, and you start playing one singing bowl, and the other bowl will start playing.
Yes.
And so it's like, can
Yes.
you match the tone in that person's body, in a sense, in your own body, allow that energy to kind of flow through and move you, but then match it in their body, and it kind of stimulates and it strikes their singing bowl in a sense. It resonates their singing bowl. So it allows that energy to then move through, and they have this experience of it moving through.
Wow. Okay, that's really fascinating, and you're gonna have to give me the links to that because I want to put that in the show notes so people can actually
Yeah.
find you and find this course? Is it just in person? Is it online?
Yeah, I'm doing it in person right now. It'll probably eventually be online. I'm
Yeah.
probably gonna launch it in the next month or two. I've done a previous course and it was great, but I'm expanding it, and
Mhm.
really the goal is to share about Kundalini energy. And at first, you
Yeah.
kind of need to understand about chi and about how to work with chi and how to move chi through your body. And that kind of preps the body for the movement of Kundalini through. And we always have
Mm.
various amounts of Kundalini energy moving through us. And people say, like, oh, my Kundalini energy is dormant. I don't find that to be true, or my chakras are
Mhm.
blocked. If your chakra was
Yep.
fully blocked, you'd be dead. So
That's so true.
so most people have
Yeah.
little trickles of this energy moving through, and that's what we want to first learn to work with and become aware of, because you can then, kind of turn the trickle on and off and just become aware of it, and that will enhance the flow of it.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense to me. Absolutely, and especially, I think that's dispelling some myths right there.
About what?
Um, about Kundalini, is some people that it's not if it's either on or off, and it's like, no, it's actually life force energy. So, what would you say the difference is, or is it the same? Because actually part of this podcast is to get everybody's different perspectives on this. Is between Chi and Kundalini.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's one that I still continue to explore. It's one of those questions that I hold in my awareness and I learn more about it. How I view it now is that you can have the broad term of energy, right? And then a step down of that energy, you could call it Kundalini. A step down of that energy, you can call it red. You could call it emotional. You could call it mental energy. You could call it physical, vital energy, sexual energy. There's all these different energies that can flow through, and Kundalini is a type of energy that moves through in the under the umbrella of like chi or prana or mana or energy.
Hmm.
Um, so in my experience, it's kind of open. You got to open up the energy channels first. It's like get more of the energy running through your system to kind of prime the movement of Kundalini. An analogy I like to use is you got to increase the gauge of your wire, right? So if you have a small gauge
Yeah.
wire and you run a lot of electricity through that wire, it's going to blow the wire out. And so what you do with first bringing chi through your system is that increase the gauge of the wire, increase your capacity to flow energy through your system. Because when Kundalini does come through, it is a very fiery energy, and it can be very potent and moving, and it can cause a lot of things. So you need to be able to open the capacity to move energy through your system and prepare yourself for when that Kundalini does come through.
Hmm. So I'm wondering, just in general, in your work, do you find that people who, let's say, worked on their, let's call it, these days it's called the shadow, but it's basically, I like to think of it as your internal issues that you might have from like childhood trauma, life trauma. It's like self sabotage.
Yeah,
I
maybe
mean,
call them your
all those,
lessons.
but your lessons, whatever you want to call them. Yeah. So do you find that like people who've worked on that have an easier time, or do you find that maybe not? I mean, I'm really curious as to what you've seen so far.
Yeah, definitely. You could look at that stuff as it's as like gunk in the pipe, right? So it's like as energy runs through, it's going to run over these layers in your aura, these other substances, and it's going to filter and change the energy as it moves through your system. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's layers that you have to kind of to move through. So as this energy moves through, it changes the way that you interpret pure energy, right? If you have a common thing is like, let's say you do ask a question, you receive an answer, right? If you have
Uh-huh.
different layers of beliefs and traumas and other things, it's going to color and change the way that you get that information. So what can happen is that as you clear out the layers of, call it trauma or lessons or beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
as you clear out these layers of beliefs about what you think you are or are not, then you can fully receive this energy more clearly. And in
Mm-hmm.
that allows you to experience it more. So
Yeah.
it is like the people that have done more of the work can experience more of the energy because there's less stuff in the way. There's less beliefs. There's less I am this, I
Mm-hmm.
am that. It's like you are everything is like how you define yourself is your choice, but learning that it's your choice and learning how have you taken on beliefs about how you define yourself or the world, and then getting rid of those and really just experiencing the raw, authentic version of
Yeah.
yourself and the raw, authentic version of energy in this reality. And so allowing that, like the more you clear that out, the more, yeah, you experience Kundalini and energy and all the things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially when I think about the Eastern paths that require a lot of training and years of preparation before you even try to ignite this energy.
Yeah,
So much of
rightfully
it is,
so.
yeah, it's like stilling the mind. And in order to still the mind, of course, you have to like work on all that other stuff,
Mhm.
to be able to release that. And it's, but it's telling you, it's interesting because I've been doing a lot of research on what academic papers are out there. Have there been studies? And there have been quite a few qualitative studies. And one of the ones that I really love is by Woolacott. And actually, this is also all in the show notes, etc. And also, I send you a copy too, because it's like pretty phenomenal, all the
Yeah,
stuff
please.
that's out there. Yeah, it's so amazing. I love seeing this because when I first looked into this, how long ago? It was like 13, 14 years ago. There was maybe one or two papers, but there had been no actual studies. People hadn't been interviewed. And now we're at the point where I think one study's 600 people, the other one's 300, the other one's 200. I mean, it's like this is a worldwide phenomenon.
Mhm.
I mean, we know that in our hearts, but now we actually have some data to look at. And one of the pieces of data that I found really interesting is that people who had a hard time with Kundalini awakenings, especially really that threw them into deep mental health issues, debilitating mental health issues, they also had mental health issues before, which I thought was really fascinating. And people had, just a baseline of mental health. Of course, everyone has their ups and downs, but a baseline of mental health. They were able to handle it even though it was disruptive. So I thought that data point's really interesting because part of the narrative that we hear, again, what's called um, dispelling some myths, is that Kundalini will make you crazy. So, yeah,
Yeah, crazy in a good way. It opens you up. But yeah, there is
yeah.
that. It's kind of like, and you threw everything in a closet and you shut the doors and you're trying to, it's like Tupperware drawer where you throw Tupperware in and shut the door real quick.
Mm.
It's like, well, it's
Bounces
gonna
back
fall
out
all
at you,
out.
right?
It's like it's always Tupperware. But using that analogy, it's like we've thrown stuff in this closet and shut the door. And so when it finally opened it up, and that's usually the awakening experience or a spiritual experience, and we see it all,
Yeah,
and we can't shut that door again, it causes people to go a little crazy because it's like, oh my gosh, I'm face to face with all my shit.
there
And
you go.
what do I do about it? And there's a lot of just stuff that comes up from it. Um, so yeah, having grace for yourself
Yeah.
in those times is important.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I've been saying the reason all that shit comes up is because all of our neurons are firing so much more quickly. Or it's like our brains are so much more lit up when we have Kundalini running through us. And therefore a lot of the cognitive structures that we have to maintain to be in the world, our bandwidth expands. And so all the stuff we're keeping in our subconscious actually now starts becoming conscious because it's just we have our ability to be more aware has expanded.
Yeah,
But
and
to
it's
me,
our
it's almost like,
beliefs become face to face with our beliefs that we thought were so
yeah,
true about ourselves in the world. And it's like, oh my gosh, they're not actually true. And then for me, it was a discovery of, okay, what is actually true? What is true?
yeah,
And the truth, you can put it in fire, you can put it in something, and it will never burn. The truth will always be there, no matter what you
so
do to it. It will
yeah,
always be there. So it's like I said, people, I always say like, if people can challenge my beliefs, I thank them because I want you to poke holes in my beliefs because if you can, then that's something that I haven't seen yet. And
yeah.
yeah, so it's like what is actually true? And so you see all this stuff about yourself that you realize it's not true, but you've thought it's true for so long, and that can cause some psychotic breaks because it's like, well, if that's
Mm.
not true, then who am I?
Oh, interesting. Can you give me some examples?
A
Either
lot
things
of
you've
times,
seen in yourself or other people?
sure, with parents, it's the
Hmm.
way that you view your parents in the world. And, one of the ones is like you realize it's like your parents are just people, and that they're
Yeah.
there doing their best also. Or you thought the world operates a certain way. You think that the world maybe is always out to get you, and that's a belief that
Hmm.
you have. Is that true? Is it not? And so it's just like you have to go through this process of discovering. One of my favorite ways of doing it is getting on a computer and typing. You can also do it writing, but I like typing because my brain thinks fast. So I can type basically as fast as I think. So
Yeah.
you get there, you just blast stream of consciousness and you start asking yourself questions. And the idea is to get to something true. Keep digging until you get to something true. And if you
Mm.
find something, dissect it, attack it. It's like, is that actually true? And I would say 99% of the time, you're going to find that it's not true. And that can cause little psychotic breaks. But that's kind of what you want because you want to get down. That's all that stuff that's keeping you from the raw, authentic version of yourself. So if you can get
Hmm.
through that, then you can actually start to experience this version of yourself that feels true.
So when you say psychotic break, do you mean like a break in a sense of identity?
Yes. Yeah, you could say that for sure.
Okay, I was wondering what you mean by that, like a psychotic break, because sometimes, I mean, when I think of it, actually, I need to look up the real definition. I don't know. I think of just not being able to function in the world.
Mhm.
Um, but is it just like a restructuring of your framework of reality?
For sure. But I mean, you can, I'm
Yeah.
sure, attest to this is like when you've had a
Yeah.
gigantic restructuring of the way that you operate in the world. I mean, I don't want to go outside. I feel like I can't go outside. I can't, I can't operate in the world. I'm like, how
Oh
do
my
I even
God. Yeah.
do anything? So you have maybe multiple. I mean, I know for me, as I had multiple of these and in a row in one time in a short amount of time, and it's like, what? I just want to sit there and stare at a wall because I can't operate. So it's like then you have to learn how to then operate from that new framework. And so
Yeah.
you help you reorganize. So what part of one of the techniques I study is network, and they talk about network chiropractic, and they talk about
Okay.
reorganizing the system around the change. And so a lot of what chiropractic does
Mm.
and what healing does, what I found that kind of has a hole in it is that if you make a change in someone's system, can the nervous system then reorganize around that change? Can you integrate that change and make it normal? Can you make the energy run through in a way that now becomes the new state of being? Um, and so I found that a lot of times people do psychedelics, or they'll go through these big journeys or whatever, and they're blown open. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I have this new state of being," and it's like, "What do I do? How do I operate in the world?" It's like they're learning then to reorganize around that new state of being. But there are ways to kind of help the nervous system integrate and reorganize around that change.
Sounds like, and then create the habits so that you maintain the change. It
Yes,
sounds
because
like.
real change is
Yeah.
consistent. Real change isn't like, oh, I did something and I come back. Real change is, okay, now this is me.
Yeah, and it's the habits around it, it's a integration, like integrating like this whole because I've met many people who would say, I've had this incredible spiritual experience, whether it be a Kundalini experience or even a psychedelic experience. You sometimes feel like, wow, I blew through my sense of reality, but then they still somehow they don't integrate it into their lives. And then they always wish they could go back to that state
Yeah, it's the doorless door
because it's,
example. It's
yeah.
when, those experiences, they open the door for you and you look through the door and maybe you walk through the door, but then you kind of like fade back out the door. Maybe the door stays cracked or open and you're still having that experience. But when full change is that when you go through that door and you integrate that new state and you look back and there's no door. And that it's just that has
Hmm.
always been.
Oh, I like that. That's a great way to look at that. That's when you know it's fully integrated.
Mhm.
Yeah, interesting. Wow. Yeah, there's so much to be said about all this. So I'm really curious to going back to Kundalini experiences, or I call them sudden, spontaneous spiritual experiences, whatever frame we want to call them. If you had to say, this is my philosophy of how I frame this, like what this is. So actually, I've got two questions here. That's one of them. I'd love to hear, like, how would you describe your philosophy of what it is?
Of Kundalini?
Yeah. Would you say it's more Taoist, more Hindu, more Buddhist,
Oh,
more something that just emerged from within? I'm really curious, your framework with it.
sure. So we talked about truth, right? You throw it in the fire, it doesn't burn. So I found studying all these various religions that everybody has a different perspective on this sphere of truth. And so I've
Mm-hmm.
taken and learned and I've looked for the truth in everything. And so I've incorporated a lot of different religions and modalities, and what I found that they all just say the same thing at the end of the day, that that we're one with everything, we're one with ourselves, and we have this beautiful energy
Mm-hmm.
inside of us. When we learn to consciously connect and experience it, then we can go through an evolution of consciousness, and that's why we're here. We're here to explore that with ourselves and with each other, and to kind of go up this infinite ladder of consciousness, and then who knows.
Yeah, that's really true. Yeah, I love that. No, but it's the framework, and having a framework around this is it's an interesting is it your experience of reality gets shifted, blown open with Kundalini experiences. And then it's interesting how different people frame it. And like, oh, okay, well, but there's a seed of truth that's always going to stay the same.
Yes, yes, truth
And
never
it's like
burns.
how it's looked at as well. Um, so one thing, people ask is, well, what is like why have a Kundalini experience? Like, why is it important? I'd love to hear your take on that.
It's a big question. What I've found is
Hmm.
that certain people are gonna have more of a connection with it than others, and it's just that's your karma in that lifetime. And it's like, why are you passionate about anything? And that's kind of your karma in that lifetime, is explore those things. And like we said earlier, everybody has Kundalini running through them, and some people have
Hmm.
more of a drive to understand it logically and mentally and be able to communicate it like we're doing now. Some people will just experience it and move on with their lives. It's always very curious to me when I work. So what I was saying is that it's always very curious to me when somebody that doesn't seem very spiritual or doesn't have an awareness of Kundalini consciously, but they have a full open moving Kundalini in their system. And
Wow.
I talked to him about it, and they're like, oh, like, oh yeah, that energy, that's just there, and that's just their way of living, and they live that way, and it's beautiful. Um, but they don't have the need and desire to explore it, but it's fully active. And
Yeah.
so I guess what I'm trying to say is that if you're interested in it, it's gonna unfold in your life. And there's a reason why you're interested and why it's unfolding in your life. um, and just kind of let it. And that's a big part of what Kundalini is surrendering to the energy and surrendering to yourself and
There
surrendering the
you
control.
go. That
And
you said it.
yeah,
Surrender. You
and
said
at the
it.
same
Yeah.
time, and this is what I've been learning recently, is like when to control, when to take control of it, and when does it want you to control. But at first, most people, myself included, I need to fully surrender to it to understand like what it's like to surrender to that energy and to surrender to yourself and everything. But there's also a time to control. And I'll just put that in there. But
Mm.
having a desire for the energy is like we were saying earlier, it's like it's that first part of the question. Is if you have the desire, then you will experience it. You will be led to different avenues and experiences to allow that to unfold for you.
Hmm. Yeah. I think that's pretty awesome. Yeah. And then how would you explain it to someone who was not into this at all?
Sure, I would
Like
say
not
that.
into even not even let's say someone who wasn't even spiritually based in any way, how would you describe even to say the end result of a
Sure,
Kundalini experience? Yeah.
I would go at it more from a physiological point of view. Is that you
Mhm.
have this cerebral spinal fluid that surrounds your spinal cord, and you have a
Yeah.
sacral pump and you have an occipital pump, and these centers pump this fluid through your spine, and it decreases waste, it increases information transmission, and it does a whole bunch of good things in your body. And so what you want is you want a standing wave, it's called. And so you want
Oh.
this continual wave of energy moving through your spine at all times. And so what I found is that that's the physiological representation of Kundalini moving through your spine, is that you have this wave that is continually moving through. So I would go out for more of a physiological point of view for someone that's not spiritually inclined, and then also
Yeah.
just have them look into how it can open in their body. It's like they can open and explore different avenues in their body. It's like get into, maybe you need to like get into your hips or you breathe more and you can expand these areas and you can feel more of those. I mean, there's people who feel more of those energies in themselves, right? Or the emotion. They would feel like the emotions, allow those emotions to move through. It's like, okay, when you do this, like, how does that make you feel? And then they can start linking in different physiological states with emotional states, and then that's going to help get the energy flowing. So you don't
Yeah.
have to even understand or even have a concept of Kundalini to be able to experience it. And most of the times you don't need that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Oh, thank you. Yeah. It's like so much because it's like people are, probably like listening who've had these experiences and people who haven't and wondering, like, well, what is this like? What is this about? Like, why? You know?
Yeah.
And
It's
yeah,
all
because
it's all
there's,
good at the end of the day,
oh, it's
it's
amazing.
all
I
just being able
know.
to live more authentically like yourself. And that's really the end goal of it all is just to live like you want to live and live like you.
Yeah. I love that. Wow. So, yeah, how do people find you? And, I forgot to mention that you live in San Diego, right here where I live, so
Yeah,
how do
I live
people
in San
find you?
Diego.
Yeah, and all
Yeah,
that,
my
and,
practice is in Mission Valley. I'm on my practice in Mission Valley, and they can find me online at iihealth.care or iichiropractic.com. And or my Instagram is Dr. Michael Baba, and they can reach out to me and we can go from there. I'd love to work with them.
yeah, wow, I love that. Wow. Well, thank you so much, and actually, do you have
Thank you.
anything else that you wanted to talk about and cover before we wrap up?
Yeah, it's not as scary as it sounds. It's people have a lot of like I said, a lot of
Mhm.
myths and preconceived notions like what this energy is, and
Is
for
not
me,
the
it's
truth,
your
yeah.
natural state. One of my friends, I would talk about the energy was like almost separate from myself. This Kundalini is running through me, and then one day she just said something, and I was like, like you are the energy, you are Kundalini. It's like that is you, and this connection because it can feel like a separate part of yourself at first because you're
Mm.
not used to being you. And so just know that this is
Oh.
you. This is your natural energy. It's your natural birthright to have this moving through you. And it does. And it's just the process of uncovering and allowing it to move more fully through you so you can have a full authentic expression of yourself and have fun while doing it.
Wow, that's actually a really great point, and I hadn't thought of mentioning that before, that sometimes people separate it because it feels so different, but it's your own energy, it's you. It's just a more expanded feeling of you.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
yes, and that's really what it comes down to, and and it's like it's almost like once you taste it, you can't go back.
Very
It's
true.
like it always
Yes.
nags at you. You cannot go back, it just feels so good to be fully alive, that
Yeah, you
it
can't
comes
put the
down
genie
to.
back in the bottle once it's out.
Nope.
Nor do you want to,
No, you don't want to. Wow. Well, thank you so much,
Thank you. This
for
was
being a
fun.
guest today. Yeah, wonderful. Okay, well, thanks again. Thank you for listening to the Wild Divine Bliss podcast. If you've had a Kundalini experience or some kind of spontaneous spiritual event that completely changed your world, well, you're not crazy and you're definitely not alone. There are more grounded, intelligent people navigating this than you might think. Inside Wild Divine Bliss, we host open quarterly Zoom gatherings to the wider community. And if you want to go deeper, there are twice monthly member conversations, some courses, and carefully curated research so you can actually understand what's happening through psychology, science, and real lived experience. If that resonates, just head to wilddivinebliss.com and explore, see what fits. Thanks for being here, and I will see you next time.